We have on the phone with us Jeff Morgan and Matt Johnston, and I was talking with Jeff before we went on break, and I mentioned a case in Pennsylvania and a case in Nebraska. And the case in particular in Pennsylvania really caught my attention because after I saw it, Jeff, I think I quote-unquote got it. I got what's happening here, and I love what's happening here because you're going through the Constitution. We are entitled to right to defend ourselves, to remedy. And in the case of no-fault divorce, there is no remedy. The judge is not a judge. He's just administering a law that automatically assumes your guilt. Your thoughts?
Oh, no, that's absolutely true. And the interesting thing was about this, BJ, is about 3 weeks ago in Texas, we had the special counsel who works with religious discrimination matters for the U.S. Attorney General speak at a Texas Values Forum. And what he spoke about is how the Department of Justice protects your religious liberty. There were two other people up there speaking about the religious liberty issue. And they mentioned the term viewpoint discrimination, religious viewpoint discrimination. And so if you are a person of faith, as the individual here is in Pennsylvania, and he says, my religious faith says that marriage is a lifelong commitment to my partner. Just everything that you're talking about, it is between one man and one woman. It is to form the relationship. It's the best relationship for children to be brought up in. And we got married in the church. These are the vows that we made before God. By allowing unilateral no-fault divorce with no allegations that anything was wrong on his part, no breach of law, you are destroying my family and therefore also causing me to violate my conscience. You want me to sign something that goes against my religion. You are depriving me of my marriage, which was a marriage based on our faith. And it actually becomes I don't want to say separation of church and state, but it becomes an issue of the government violating our religious liberty, a free exercise of religious liberty, and a religious liberty protections that we should have. But maybe Matthew could speak on that just a little bit more even.
Yeah, please, Matt.
Yeah, well, one of the interesting things about this, too, is because, and through a series of, time in history, I mean, one of the reasons why marriage is, quote, regulated by the state is because we have separation of church and state, and we can debate whether that's a good thing or not. But one of the things here that's happening is that, when people get divorced through no-fault divorce, many times the lawyers and the judges say, well, hey, we as the government of Texas or the government of New York or the government of whatever state, we can't endorse or we can't favor or prefer your religious viewpoint, your opinion, your religion, because that would be a violation of the Establishment Clause. We cannot sponsor a particular religion. So oftentimes there's a misconception that those who are using religious arguments to say, this is violating my religious exercise and my beliefs, there's a misconception that, well, the government can't, because the government can't sponsor you, then we're going to go with the other person. But what's happening with no fault is because it's a law that is not regulating a particular conduct or behavior, as in the past. When there was, as Jeff mentioned, abandonment or adultery, things of that sort, you could at least say, well, the state has the right to regulate someone's conduct. And you can continue on and believe that you're married according to the dictates of your conscience and before God. However, as the state of, New York, you've violated the law because you've committed adultery or you've abandoned your spouse. No fault basically removes that regulation of conduct completely. And so what you're left with is simply an opinion, a viewpoint, or a subjective argument from the parties that say, one spouse says the marriage is irretrievably broken, and the other spouse says it's not. And so, the government says, well, we can't prefer the one that says it's not. But then the alternative is for them to come around and say, well, we have to side with the one that views that the marriage is irretrievably broken. And the reason for that is because the law in the statute itself says on the petition of a spouse that claims or alleges that the marriage is irretrievably broken. So in the law itself, it is favoring a one-sided or a particular point of view or an ideological belief system that's not Christian in nature, but it is a sort of form of religion because it's taking a particular viewpoint and favoring that. And so, that's something that's very foreign to our system of government. That's something that's very foreign to our concept of what the limitations of the state are. And as Jeff said, it's a violation of due process because, while our rights can be taken away under certain circumstances, they cannot be taken away for no reason at all, and certainly not when we either when there's an absence of violating the law or when we don't give our consent. That's illegal.
Jeff Morgan and Matt Johnston are heavily involved in what is going on in America with regards to no-fault divorce. I'd asked the question earlier, and Jeff or Matt, either one of you can answer this. What is going on in Pennsylvania? What is going on in Nebraska? And tell me what kind of an opportunity that presents to us, family supporters.
So I've actually, I went up and I saw the person up in Pennsylvania. His name is Ryan Panko. He's the one who's fighting it. I interviewed him, and I have some videos on YouTube that if you want, you can link to later. But I think I'm going to defer to Matt because Matt's closer to him, has had a lot more conversation with him. So if you don't mind, BJ, I'm going to let him speak a little bit more in depth on the situation. Is that okay?
Thank you, yes. Yeah, just this one time, though.
Okay, go get it.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so I've had conversations with Ryan, and one of the things that he expressed was that he wanted to challenge this in court, and so it was a process. His wife filed for. She said the marriage was irretrievably broken, and he came back and answered, and he said, "I don't agree with that. I contest that." And that's a conclusion of law that the judge is going to have to decide. But that's not something that I agree with. And so during the course of process, I guess you have to propose or set forth your constitutional challenge before the trial or at trial. And so through that and through different papers that he filed, he said basically that this violates the 14th Amendment, it violates the First Amendment, and then he kind of explained a little bit of why that was. Ultimately, that he didn't feel that the no-fault statute provided him a defense, that he could even stand up in court and say everything he wanted, but because he wasn't accused of anything, there wasn't anything that he could defend. And so, from that experience, the judge ultimately granted him the no-fault divorce, which I guess he expected because this is the way it works, this is the system. So then he decided that he's going to appeal it and petition the next court up. Pennsylvania's got three levels of court systems. You've got the county court, and then you've got the appellate court, or the superior court as they call it in Pennsylvania, and then you've got the Supreme Court, and that's right before the U.S. Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. So he filed his notice of appeal, and he said these are the reasons why I'm appealing, and he laid out the arguments, and he didn't just say, well, it violates my First and 14th Amendment. He really got into the weeds and explained and expounded on that to make his argument credible, and so he files an appeal brief to initially present his argument, and then the other side has an opportunity to respond, and it was very convoluted. I read their reply, and it was very convoluted, but it really wasn't responding to the points that he was making. And then he had finally a last opportunity to either clarify or respond to what they were saying. And now that he's just waiting for a decision to be made. There are there's a 3-panel judge or 3 judges on a panel to review this case, and so we're just awaiting a decision. And because we know how long the system has been in place and what the conflicts of interest are, as I mentioned before, with judges and lawyers having an incentive to keep the no-fault system in place.
Right.
I think he's kind of hoping for the best and expecting the worst kind of thing. So, he's got young kids, and it's a sacrifice for him to be able to do this because talking about the case in Nebraska, the gentleman's lawyer basically said when he challenged no fault, you may kind of hint, you may lose your home and your all your goods and all this kind of stuff. Now, fortunately, his kids are over the age of 18, but it goes to show you that for those who are fighting against the system, there are potentially repercussions and retaliation that is really a sacrifice. So you have to be willing to fight this thing.
Okay. So it's in a.
If you don't mind, if I could add a brief.
Go ahead,
Jeff.
Jeff.
Just a brief additional thing to that. So I mentioned that Eric Treen spoke at the Texas Values Forum in Austin. So I actually contacted his office, and I called. I was pleasantly surprised. He picked up the phone. I was not expecting to talk to him directly, and I had mentioned the Pennsylvania case to him. And about a week, I said I asked him if he would mind reviewing it, because normally we don't deal with family law situations. But about a week later, I did actually send him the information. I don't know what the status of it is, but I do plan to follow up with that, because this is an issue that, as Ryan and Matt have been talking about here, this is of supreme constitutional importance. It is a religious viewpoint discrimination case, in my opinion. And even though it's supposedly a family court situation, the fact that it's being reviewed right now by 3 judges, I think it takes it out of that realm, and I think that it's something that perhaps can be looked at to say unilateral no-fault divorce is religious viewpoint discrimination.